Hi, I'm attorney Gregory Dell, joined by attorney Rachel Alters, and we're going to talk about headache and migraine disability insurance claims and why they're one of the most challenged disability claims of all medical conditions that we deal with. And Rachel, the headaches, chronic migraines, daily headache disorder, chronic daily migraine disorder, there's tons of diagnosis dealing with headaches and migraines. And while I know they're different, we're going to lump them together in this video, and we're going to talk about what it's going to take to get approved for these claims and provide tips for people that may have been denied, and talk about the experiences we've had in handling these types of claims and what makes these claims so challenging. And headaches is a type of condition that's been experienced by probably every human being you've ever encountered in your life at some point in time has had a headache. Unfortunately, it becomes a chronic condition for people, and it prevents them from being able to focus and do the job that they were once able to do, and for that matter, any occupation. But the biggest issue, Rachel, with these claims is that they're subjective in nature. Can you first talk about what it means that they're subjective, and also along those lines in terms of when someone calls you with a headache or chronic migraine disorder, what you're thinking about that you're going to have to prove as a result of their diagnosis?
Sure, Greg. Of course, the first thing an insurance carrier looks for is proof of your disability. Unfortunately, with migraines and headaches, majority of the time, there isn't a way to take an objective test. Objective means a test that will show up as positive for whatever condition you have. So if you have a heart condition, your EKG or your echocardiogram can show up as showing you have a heart condition. If you have diabetes, your blood test will show that you are diabetic and your blood sugars are really high. With the headaches and migraines, there is really no test that exists at this point that indicate that you have migraines or headaches and the severity of the headaches and migraines, unfortunately. So most of these conditions are diagnosed by subjective complaints, and a subjective complaint is what you're telling the doctor. So it's how you're describing in your own words to your physician about the way you're feeling, and the physician will document these complaints down in your medical records. Oftentimes insurance carriers say, well, this is not enough. We require objective proof of your disability in order to approve the claim. However, there's a lot of disabilities, including in a lot of conditions, including migraines and headaches, where there's just no way to provide that objective proof. Even if an MRI is done, 9 times out of 10, the MRIs are coming up negative, yet somebody is still having disabling migraines that literally shut their life down, sometimes for a day or two. I have claimants who will have a migraine and it lasts, almost an entire day. That day, they're laying in a dark room for the whole day, and then the next day, they're so exhausted and fatigued from the migraine that they still can't function. So this is an issue that, they run across, and it's hard to show the carriers that, hey, yes, this migraine condition exists without the subjective complaints and proof from the claimant to their doctors.
So, Rachel, in a lot of the claims that I've had, people have had either some kind of event that triggered the headache, or the headaches got so bad that they ended up in the hospital, and they may have gone once or twice. Some people have had spinal taps that result in subsequent chronic headache issues. A lot of women have had them subsequent to childbirth or as side effects of fertility type drugs, or something that caused an event which triggered the headaches, or it's secondary to another condition, whether they have Meniere's or vertigo, or they had an accident. Something like that started the headaches. And it doesn't matter what the cause of the headache was, because we don't need to prove that, and the disability policy doesn't require that. But on a moving forward basis, some disability carriers will often say, okay, you had an event, you might have been hospitalized, we see that you've been treating for a little bit for this, you tried 2 or 3 medications, and then after maybe they approve the short-term disability, then they get on long-term for about 6 months to a year, and that's usually the critical point where we see these claims are very often denied. So what are some tips that you can give people to keep themselves on claim and really put themselves in the best position possible from medical documentation to show that nothing changed and they still have the same limitations that they had before?
Sure. This is the key, Greg, because in order to prove that you have this condition and that it's ongoing, there has to be documentation. There has to be medical notes that reflect that the headaches are continuing, whether they're getting worse or not, that you're continuing to experience the headaches. I often tell my clients it's very important to keep a headache log, which is a diary of the headaches that you're having on a daily basis, so that when the carrier questions, well, hey, it doesn't seem like you're having these headaches as often because maybe you're not going to the doctor as often or the doctor isn't documenting it, you can produce a headache log that shows, hey, I had a headache 4 times this week. It lasted 3 hours. After the headache, I wasn't able to do anything. I had to take a nap for 2 more hours. It's very important also that these headache logs are accurate, because oftentimes a carrier can use a headache log in conjunction with following you with surveillance and try and slip you up on, well, this day you said you never left the house, but here we see you leaving the house. So what I tell my clients is it's very important to keep these headache logs, make sure they're accurate, don't exaggerate them, and also make sure you're treating with your physicians on a regular basis and telling them everything that is going on, even if the doctor tells you, hey, there's not much more I can do for you. This is the medication I want you to continue to take. Some my clients will say, well, the doctor says there's nothing to do, so I shouldn't go back to see him. And I say, oh, absolutely, that's not the case. Please discuss with your doctor that you have a disability claim, and in order to keep yourself on claim, you need medical documentation, which means frequent doctor's visits. And during those visits, you have to let the doctors know how often the headaches are occurring, the severity of the headaches, and what it causes you in their life, what effect they have on your daily life. It's extremely important.
So the other thing, Rachel, is that with chronic headaches or daily migraines or however, there's different diagnosis based upon how often you have these the symptoms. And what I've found in a lot of my claims is that the headaches or the migraines are what I call episodic, meaning, like you were saying, if someone has a log, they might say they get them every day, and it might be an hour, it might be 2 hours. But there's a lot of clients who can go 2, 3, or 4 days without a headache, and then all of a sudden, bam, they get one. It lays them down for a day, a couple hours, and then there's the residual side effects after the headache in terms of the recovery period, which is like somebody who's ever been hungover has that feeling of you're not all there. You're drowsy, you're fatigued, you're still recovering from, I shouldn't say hungover, physically exhausted from having a lack of sleep would be a common feeling from overcoming that. At the end of the day, it's not about 24/7 or 8 hours a day you have to have a headache to be disabled from this. It's about being able to work with reasonable continuity. Explain what that means and how you use the requirement in the law that a person must be able to work with reasonable continuity, and making the analogy between that and a person who's going to have episodes, whether it's once a week, 5 times a month, and why they can't work as a result of that.
Sure. Well, there's no, at least that I know of, there's no job in the world that will let you take off 2 to 3 days a week because you have a headache and still keep your job open for you. So most employers require that an employee be able to work with reasonable continuity, which means show up to the job, every day. Obviously, somebody is allowed to have sick days, but if you're not a reliable employee, you're going to get fired. So, what we tell the insurance carrier is, yes, maybe my client has headaches on average 2 to 3 times a week, and maybe they're having good days, 1 or 2 days a week, maybe 3. However, they're not able to work with any type of reasonable continuity, and therefore even if they went to go get a job and attempted this, they're going to get fired from every job that they attempt. Unfortunately, there's no job where you can just work 2 days a week when you're feeling good, and oftentimes these headaches are unpredictable. So, it's not as if when the headaches are coming. It can be you're getting a headache 2 days a week, then the next week you're not getting headaches at all, and then the week after you might have headaches every day. So this is the type of thing that, yes, if you keep a headache log, there will be more of a permanent record of when and how often you have the headaches. But if you're not able to work with reasonable continuity, then under the policy, you should be considered disabled. And we usually get the help of the neurologist to be able to document, yes, this, my patient is having headaches multiple times a week. The headaches are disabling. The headaches are causing them not be able to function. They can't concentrate. They can't think. They're in pain. And oftentimes my clients also develop secondary depression and anxiety from having these headaches so often. And that's another issue that comes into play when people have migraines, is that they're depressed about the fact that their lives are completely torn apart. They're not able to function. They can't work. And this is another issue that, a secondary issue that causes them to become disabled and not be able to work with reasonable continuity.
And Rachel, what a lot of claimants understand because they're living it, but the disability carriers, in my opinion, fraudulently take advantage of them, is the fact that the claimants we have will say, look, when I don't have a headache, I feel fine. I can do anything. The problem is when it comes unexpectedly. Let's take a lawyer, for example, as an occupation, and I have deposition set tomorrow, or I'm supposed to meet with 5 clients. How am I supposed to commit to that schedule? How am I supposed to commit to a 6-hour deposition? Or how am I supposed to line up 6 or 7 clients when my whole livelihood is based upon being available for clients, scheduled appointments, going to court hearings? And it's not just lawyers. It's no matter what job it is. You have deadlines to meet. You have phone calls to do. You have goals that you have to set. And you can't be on and off unpredictably. No one would ever hire that type of person, and no one should ever expect someone to have to work in that capacity. So it's the disability carrier plays the game and says, well, we saw you on video for 3 days and you looked like you were going to the grocery store, you took your kids to soccer, you picked your kids up from school. Whatever you did everything normal. And the response is, yes, I was normal for the 2 days that you got me, but the day that I didn't come out of the house, you don't know what was going on with me in there because I never even came outside and you're just assuming everything was fine. So this is the normal protocol of what we see. And it's so subjective that the disability carriers take advantage of this situation all the time because they know if you don't have a headache, you're fine. If you do have a headache, clearly you're going to be limited. And that's the dance that we play, and we work with the doctors and we work with the claimant. And you suggested the headache log, which is fantastic, and working with other coworkers and family members to give statements or all of the different types of things. And most importantly, working with the neurologists and the treating doctors to say, is it reasonable that all of these symptoms that our clients complaining of are happening and that they're happening as often as they are? And ultimately, can the person work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week? Because the law is, if you can't do that, then you can't do the job. So in summary, we encourage you to reach out to us. We've handled so many of these headaches and migraine claims for claimants all over the country, and we always provide an initial free consultation. So we encourage you to send us a copy of your policy, send us a copy of your denial letter, whether it's Rachel or myself. We will immediately review that documentation and get on the phone with you and spend as much time as we need to let you know how we think that we can help you. We also encourage you to spend some time searching our website, watching our videos, searching by your company or your medical condition or your occupation. We want you to look at the cases and lawsuit summaries that we've handled and that we've summarized from cases all over the country, the reviews from other clients, questions and answers that we've answered for people. We want you to be as educated as possible about this process because I hate to call it, Rachel, but it's a game. Like everything else, you have to know the strategies, you have to know how to play it, and we want you to be prepared to win. And by win, we mean we want you to get your benefits and protect your benefits. So we look forward to the opportunity to speak with you, and we'll be here when you need us in the future.